to order. Would you open the roll?
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to call the 2020 session privileges and elections to order. I know we had a special meeting last week, but I want to take some time to let everybody on the committee introduce themselves, and then we'll start with Senator McDougal down there, if you will. Tell the
Mr. Chairman, I'm so far down here, I don't even know if y'all can see me at the other end.
Yeah.
From Hanover, represent 9 other jurisdictions.
Yes, Mark Peak, State Senate 22nd District, and I'm from Lynchburg, and I have 8 other jurisdictions.
Frank Ruff, 15th Senate District, which is much of Southern Virginia.
Ben Chafin, 38th Senate District. It's the northern part of Southwest Virginia from Radford back to Kentucky.
Bryce Reed, 17th District, Central Virginia.
Jill Vogel, the 27th District, part of the Northern Valley and the Piedmont. And if you listen to the floor debate, the senator from Prince William pointed out also West Virginia, a portion of West Virginia.
Janet Howell, 32nd District, and that's parts of Arlington and Fairfax counties.
I'm Creed Deeds, live in Bath County, represent the 25th District, which stretches from West Virginia to Fluvanna County line.
Adam Eben from the 30th District, parts of Arlington, Alexandria, and Fairfax.
Lonnie Spruill, the 5th District, statewide.
Scott Servo, represent the 36th Senate District, Stafford, Prince William, and the parts of Fairfax County that Eben doesn't have in George Washington's estate.
But who's got the house, Scott?
Monty Mason, 1st District on the Virginia Peninsula.
Jennifer McClellan, 9th District, which includes the capital, parts of Richmond, Eastern Henrico, town of Ashland and Hanover, and all of Charles City County.
Jennifer Boysko, 33rd Senate District, that is Eastern Loudoun County from Leesburg down to Sterling Park and Dulles Airport, and parts of Fairfax County.
John Bell, representing the 13th District. I've got the rest of Loudoun that Jennifer doesn't have, and parts of Prince William County.
Okay. Welcome to all the new members and to everybody else. We're fortunate that Hobie Lehman remains our clerk and to be staffed by our counsel, Meg Lamb, up front here. We also have from the clerk's office, Autumn Green and Catherine Dent. I'd like the pages to introduce themselves. Tell us where you're from, too.
I'm Rebecca Bullock. I'm from Abilene.
Welcome. From which county? Welcome. And the page is here. They're not. Okay. First off, the committees received the oaths and certificates of election for the 40 senators, and it's the responsibility of this committee to examine them and to ensure they're in order. I've got them right here if anybody wants to look at them, wants to examine them, but I'm assured that everything is in order. So I move to report to the Senate that these oaths and certificates have been examined by this committee and have been found to order. I want that kind of motion. Okay. Do we need a recorded vote on that? Okay. All in agreement, say aye. Okay. Close the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay. We have a sign-up sheet. I've kind of thought about this thing only in terms of the way the docket is, but Senator Suderline is first on the list, and why don't you come up with your bill, Senator Suderline? Is that 217?
I have 57 and 217 both, sir.
Okay.
And I'd also like to thank you for affirming my election as everyone else's. That was good. Which one would you prefer me to go first?
It's your choice.
I'll go with Senate Bill 57, First, this is similar to legislation I brought before the Senate a few years ago. What this legislation does is it requires candidates for local and constitutional office to file their campaign finance reports electronically. A few years ago, I brought legislation that would require in all counties 70,000 and above. I think it's now the time for everyone to do it. The reason I brought the legislation to begin with was I actually talked to a candidate who I suspected this was the case, but I said, why do you file by paper? And they said, because then it's not reported. And they correctly understood that by filing by paper, it was going into a file at the registrar's office. The newspaper no longer reported the campaign finance reports, and no one else was putting it online. So they were basically able to comply with the law of disclosure without ever disclosing. And I think that in 2020, everyone should be filing electronically. I know a few of the no votes I actually got to my bill a few years ago was because it didn't apply to everyone. I think we're now at the point where we should require everyone to do that.
Does everybody have broadband access? Does everybody have access to fast computers?
Well, the SPE comment system is not the most challenging one. And I would point out, if you're going to be an elected official, if you're seeking office, you should at least be able to, the handful of times a year, go to the public library and file your report if you have no other way of doing it. I mean, these folks are going to need to, they're not going to say that they're not going to accept email from any constituents either. So I think if you're willing to run for office and you're willing to put yourself at that level, your finance reports should be done electronically so everyone has access.
Are there members of the committee that wish to ask Senator Suderland questions? Well, are there members of the audience that wish to speak to this bill? Speak in favor of the bill first. Is anybody that wishes to speak against the bill? Senator Eben.
Just to follow up with the chairman's inquiry about the broadband availability, I think this is a good bill, but I'm just wondering, have you, I guess you wouldn't have gotten any emails from anyone who doesn't have it, but do we know, is there any expert in the room about, maybe from SBE, about if there are reports that they get that are all done by paper? James, or whoever's your agency representative?
They would file locally.
Oh, they are all the paperwork for candidates filed locally? Isn't there some that's filed with your office?
So everything that's filed with our Deputy Commissioner, Jessica Bowman, Department of Elections, everything that's filed with our office is now electronic. If you live in a town of 300 people and you want to file electronically, you may. You don't have to file by paper. But those paper records do go to the registrar's office.
So there's nothing, if I could follow up, Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
So there's nothing that is filed with your office that must be filed electronically?
Correct.
Thank you.
Well, I would disagree that we have to file electronically with them, and so does everyone in the county 70,000 and above. Okay. And something that, because this was on my mind a lot during the campaign, and I represent some jurisdictions that are under 70,000, I went to see how many of them had Facebook pages, and pretty much everyone had a Facebook page. So they were all using electronic means to campaign and try to solicit votes. And actually, I found in the more rural counties, the more intense the Facebook campaigning actually is. It might be because door knocking is a little harder there.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, just as a point on the question about broadband access, I know I've filed a number of campaign reports for my campaign. Sometimes there's several thousand donations in a quarter, and the file sizes are very small still because it's really just numbers. I would argue that in a smaller election, these are going to be very small files, and I don't think that broadband, while that would be the best way to go, should stand in the way of this.
Are there other questions?
Mr. Chairman, a quick one.
Senator Surville.
I have a question for the patron. I support the bill and its intent, but one question I had is, I'm pretty sure it's still that some smaller localities still don't have to file at all. unless they opt in. Is that right? And if so, do you support
So
requiring everybody who's running a campaign in the
there'd be-
state to have to file?
You might see a different bill at a future meeting on some of those items that also has my name on it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
It's none of my business.
And it just expands who'd have to file. I don't want, we can get into that at that time. Hopefully you like it too.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair,
Senator Vogel.
if I may, just speaking to the bill. We have made a public policy decision that we believe in disclosure. And I think the value of this bill is to level the playing field and make it completely fair. It doesn't seem very fair that one person would have to disclose all of their donors, all their receipts and disbursements, and another person wouldn't by virtue of what is now an under $70,000 rule. I mean, under 70,000 person population rule. And so I feel pretty strongly that, you know, we all talk about transparency. We're going to talk about some campaign finance bills later and talk about equity in the system. And I think it just starts with this sort of basic threshold requirement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anybody else that wants to be heard? Is there a motion on the bill?
Move to report. Second.
Okay. Been moved and seconded. Open the roll.
That's 14, knows 1.
Thank you.
What's your next bill?
It is Senate Bill 217, sir. And Senate Bill 217, as you can see, it's a new code section. What it seeks to do is require contributions of $1,000 and above that are made between January 1st and the beginning of a General Assembly session have to be disclosed in the same form that we have to disclose contributions in the final days of our primary and general election campaigns. I feel pretty strongly that these contributions should be reported and quickly, but especially because our current campaign finance calendar means we don't have to disclose contributions that we receive between January 1st and June 30th until July 15th. And that means that any contribution that we receive between January 1 and the start of session is actually not disclosed until the vast majority of laws that we pass go into effect July 1. And I think that I would argue that it's even more important that the contributions we receive right before going into the General Assembly than the ones we receive right before an election.
Chairman?
Senator Sproul.
Thank you. Senator, have you found any problems in the fraud or someone trying to mislead, particularly the press, just as for a campaign reason? I'm trying to figure out that we know that if you get a contribution from January the 1st prior to session, some followed in June. So unless I'm trying to do something crooked, so I'm trying to figure out, have you found out there was a problem? Because by law, we know while we're in session, we can't do it anyway. So I can't file it anyway because of that. So I'm waiting till that time after the session to file it. So have you found out there any problem as far as somebody trying to break the law and doing anything crooked?
Well, I wouldn't assign intent of someone trying to do anything crooked. I know a few years ago, we're obviously prohibited from accepting contributions between General Assembly convening and General Assembly adjourning regular session. That some enterprising reporters just went through all the campaign finance reports to see if anyone happened to report any contributions during those days, and they found that there were people reporting contributions those days. I don't think it was intentional, and what was suggested was it was someone either misallocating the date on the, perhaps it came in the second and they put 2/2 and it showed up January 22nd. And something like that which would be a problem. But my bill is not about what we take during session. It's just about this year it would be just about 8 days. And the idea is that those contributions ought to be reported in the only at those $1,000 and above. It's exactly like the format that we have for in the final days of an election. So if you have an email contribution of $25 beforehand, you don't have to go rush to report that. But if someone gives you $2,500 the day before session, you have to report that in the same way you have to if someone gives you $2,500 on election eve.
I guess the
Mr.
difference
Chairman?
between this sort of thing and what you're talking about, and the pre-election, is that there's nobody that's going to vote an election on the first day of session.
I would suggest it's more important because when people are giving us campaign contributions that close to an election, everyone can anticipate it's immediately going to be spent on the election. When we get a contribution in the first 8 days of the last term, actually before we're starting the next one, we're actually the furthest removed from an election. That money may be used for purposes of Facebook advertising, legislation that we might be doing, all sorts of things. And I think if it's over $1,000, I mean, that's the level of scrutiny I think that should be reported.
I interrupted Senator Spruill, I apologize.
The second question then,
Yes, sir.
so are you trying to satisfy the press? 'Cause you can never satisfy the press.
I'm a Republican. I don't think I can ever satisfy the press.
But the question was then, I mean, if somebody get on in that case, then I would tell them about it the same and say, hey, if you're going to give me a contribution between that time, then send me $995. Don't make it $1,000. So that be okay? They send me $995? That's not $1,000. So could I accept that?
Yes, it would be just like in the same way that in the final days of your general election campaign or a primary election, someone could do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Are there additional questions? Senator Howe.
Mr. Chairman, I really have no problem with reporting any contributions, but I just think people should be aware of the kind of time pressure we're under the beginning of the calendar year. We're getting ready for session, we're doing our bills, and we're thinking about our budget amendments. We're having public hearings. I typically have 3 that week. We're packing, and for those with jobs, they're trying to get everything in order for them to be away for possibly 2 months. We also have to fill out our financial disclosure forms, which can take hours. So what you have is just a cascading number of things that have to be done the first week or so of January. And if there were some other way to do it, some other time frame, I might be interested in this. But I just think it's the straw that breaks the camel's back, or at least this camel.
Did you want him to respond to that? Is there a question?
Mr. Chairman.
Well, Senator Servo, you're next after.
Does the chair want me to respond or just
No,
listen?
we're not having a running debate.
Well, that's why I was asking if you wanted me to respond.
Senator
Mr. Chairman, I would just note, I think the gentleman has an excellent idea because I put the exact same bill in 2012. But
I wasn't a member then.
in any event, but I would just point out, though, I think that part of the concern that I think some people are eliciting might be resolved by saying that no campaign contributions can be accepted after December 31 when the report is filed, and that would also solve any issues with that.
Senator Eben.
Well, if I just wanted to note 2 things. First is if no contributions could be accepted after that date, we'd have no major sponsors for Senator Servo's Rock and Roll on the Potomac, or whatever it's called, his fundraiser is. But more importantly, Senator Howell's comments made me think of one other thing, which is when we disclose before the election, the voters are made aware within 24 hours of this important large contribution. Whereas if we disclose before the session, okay, so what? Nothing's going to happen right then at that moment. So that tends to cause me not to favor the bill. Sorry about that.
Are there others who wish to be heard?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
I don't think I understood Senator Evans' comments here, because the most important thing is, all right, you won your election. You're getting ready to come here and vote on legislation. What he's trying to do is let the people know that I just received $5,000 from this corporation on January 2nd, and I'm going to be voting on their bills on January 9th. That's the point of this legislation. It's important that the people know who dumps money into us from January 1st to January 8th. And I'll tell you, I got 0, so unlike Senator Howell, I'm not going to have any problems. So that's the point of this bill.
think
So
we
they
can-
know where we get the money before we start voting on legislation.
So I guess you're for it.
I am for it, and that's answering some of those questions they raised.
Okay, are there members of the public that would like to speak in favor of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Shippey from Sierra Club, we support the bill. I couldn't have said it any better than Senator Peake. I think it's good sense, transparency for the voters. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there others? Are there those who have a contrary view? Okay, is there a motion on the bill? Any further discussion? Okay, open the roll.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Okay, the bill passes.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Senator Sudan. You've left this committee with 2 victories.
And a Sierra Club endorsement, too.
Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 174 is one that is very familiar to this committee because a number of you have actually introduced it. This bill will change the way Virginia determines the allocation of its electoral votes in races for president and vice president in a way that is more representative of the will of the people, those voting in a presidential election. Currently, the candidates for president and vice president receiving the highest number of votes win all of the Commonwealth's electoral votes in a winner-take-all system. Approximately half of all Virginians feel like their voices are not heard each presidential election. And that's, of course, because we're a winner-take-all state. But seldom does the winner of all of our electoral college votes win more than half of the popular votes in Virginia. The bill will ensure the voices of all Virginians are properly heard. And as I mentioned earlier, the bill has been introduced and are supported by both Republicans and Democrats. It revises the process by which the Commonwealth's electoral votes are allocated. Under the current system, even the candidate only wins 51% of the popular vote. The winner receives 100% or all of the electoral college votes. Under this bill, the winner wins one electoral college vote for each congressional district they win, based on the popular vote of that particular congressional district. This makes up 11 of the 13 electoral votes, and the remaining 2 votes go to the winner of the popular vote. This is the same method that you've seen in Maine and Nebraska. In my opinion, this winner-take-all precedent is not representative of the desires of Virginia. The division will provide a voice for the rural areas. Northern Virginia, because of the concentrated population, negates the voices of those in the rest of Virginia. All voters should be represented in the Presidential Electoral College. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I want to make sure I understand. There are 2 states that do it, that
Correct.
select electors somewhat like this, like
Right, Maine and Nebraska.
Maine and Nebraska. Okay. Are there questions from the committee?
Oh, that was from before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are there those in the public who would like to speak in favor of this bill? Please come up. Tell us who you are and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Maurice Skinner. I'm in Senate District 35. I speak in favor and I support this bill and urge the committee to accept it and forward it.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there others? Are there those in the public who would like to speak against this bill?
Hi, I'm Frida Cathcart from Roanoke, Virginia. I would like to encourage the committee to vote against this bill. And I know that there's a movement, I don't know if there's a bill in this legislature that has been brought forth, but there is a movement to encourage states to vote for the popular, to let all the electoral college votes go to whoever wins the popular vote. And I would ask you all to pass on this and to support that effort. Thank you.
Okay. Come on up.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Kenneth Gilliam. I'm the Policy Director for New Virginia Majority. We are a statewide advocacy organization that engages voters, particularly communities of color throughout the state, and we oppose this bill.
Thank you very much. And yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Candace Overby. I am simply a citizen in Chesterfield County and also a mother and a wife. And I would like to propose that if you think that the people actually want the national popular vote in the state of Virginia, that we should be given the opportunity to decide that by means of that, put it on the ballot or something has
Okay,
to be.
we're not really talking about that bill right now. We're talking about this bill. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, the bill's before the committee.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Eben.
I have a motion that I'd like to speak to later, which is to PBI the bill.
Okay, there's a motion to PBI. Second. A motion and a second.
If I might.
And any discussion, yes.
I think the best course is a bill that I've asked to be postponed a week, which is to get into a compact to abolish the Electoral College if you want all voices to truly matter, and the national popular vote would prevail in that circumstance. And that's part of my, and I also want to point out, we do have at times or mostly gerrymandered congressional districts. So in that case, you would have the votes divided by however the congressional districts are gerrymandered.
Okay. Are there others who want to be heard? Okay, those who want the PBI the bill vote yes, and those who don't want the PBI the bill vote no. Okay. Do you have another bill?
No, not yet.
That's
Thank
12
you.
noes, three.
Thank you.
There'll be more.
Okay. I've got Senator Locke and Senator Peterson on the sign-up sheet, but Senator Peterson, I know, is chairing the Agriculture Committee, and so he's not going to be here until probably the very end. There are a number of bills on the docket that deal with no excuse absentee voting, and Senator Howell's doesn't necessarily have the lowest number, but I've spoken with Senator Spruill, who does have the lowest number. Yes, and what I'd move, and Senator Locke, okay, you are here. Okay, good.
I am here.
Okay, I didn't realize. You've got one of those no excuse absentee voting. What I'd like to do is roll all these bills into Senator Howell's number.
Works for me.
List everybody as chief co-patron, and that includes Senator Stewart's bill as well, as Senator Locke, Senator Spruill, Senator Howell, and Senator Mason, yes. Okay. Excuse me? Vote to incorporate, yes. Vote to adopt a substitute that incorporates. Yes, that's fine.
That's 15-0.
Bach, if I can understand, your bill is the governor's bill, is that correct? Okay, so there are differences between your bill and Senator Howell's bill, and maybe some of those, maybe Meg's the one that's in the best position to define the differences for us.
Sure. It would probably be easier if we go to SB 879, Mr. Chairman, and I can point out where the differences are between Senator Locke's bill and the other two no excuse absentee. They're pretty small technical things.
Okay.
So on page 2 at lines 112 and 113, there's the phrase, who has applied for absentee ballot pursuant to section 24.2-701. That's in this bill and not in the others, but could be included in the vehicle.
That just requires somebody to apply for the ballot?
It's just a clarifying phrase to
Okay.
reference covered voters. Yep.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, and then page 3 at lines 164, 167, there are two references to the state board that are stricken and replaced with the department. As I understand it, this is to reflect the administrative responsibilities between those two entities now. And then on line 170, there is a cross-reference that's included that should be in the other one as well, adding or 24.2-703.1. On page 4, we have another reference to state board being stricken and replaced with the department, line 198 and 199. And then on page 5, beginning on line 269, there's a sentence added that says, in the case of a special election, including for federal offices, if time is insufficient between the issuance of the writ calling for the special election and the date of the special election, absentee voting in person shall be available as soon as possible after the issuance of the writ. This is reflect that sometimes there's not 45 days between a special election being called and when the election is actually held. And then at the bottom of page 5, at lines 298, there's another sentence. Such location shall be deemed the equivalent of the office of the general registrar for the purposes of completing the application for an absentee ballot in person pursuant to sections 24.2-701 and 24.2-706. This is some other language the department wanted included. So other than those things, those bills are identical.
Those sound like pretty much technical changes then. If you all want to speak to the bills, then.
Speak to the bills first?
Sure. Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is very similar to bills you've been seeing for many years, if you've been here. I first put it in under Governor Kane's administration. And what has traditionally happened is it gets out of the Senate and then dies in the House P&E rather quickly and brutally. But what this bill will do is just get rid of the requirements that you have to swear to if you were voting in person absentee, and makes it basically an early voting bill. What got me revved up to start down this path in the first place was the then congressman representing where I live told people in a robo-dial that they could just go and with no reason vote in person absentee, which was of course wrong. So then people were in the position that they would have to lie, basically. And it just strikes me as wrong that under any circumstances, voters would be encouraged to lie to exercise their franchise.
Okay, and I apologize. Senator Reeves just brought an idea to me about rolling one of his bills into this as well that has to do with military absentee voting, and I asked that he. Okay, well, Senator Reeves, you might want to explain what your provisions do. Senator Locke, do you want to add anything to what Senator Howe said?
No, she did well.
Okay.
What she said.
Okay. Okay. Senator Reeves, it's 455. It deals with overseas military and overseas absentee ballots received after the
Thank you,
polls
Mr. Chairman.
close.
What this does is in the same code section. I figure for the sake of clarity and cleaning up that whole code section rather than go through another process with a bill, Senator Servo and I have, this is a priority of the Joint Leadership Council of Veteran Service Organizations, one of their top priorities. And what it does is we found that there are a lot of votes that weren't being counted by our active military after 7. It makes a carve-out provision specifically just for those military ballots that have, the summary is they have to be counted after 7 if they get them in after 7, because sometimes the mail from APOs and everything else. So it's a pretty I think, Meg, you probably have it if you want to explain further, but that's what it does.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servo.
Yeah, and I'm a co-sponsor, speaking to Senator Reeves' suggestion.
Okay.
I have a motion coming, but yeah, that's a bill that I carried, I think, 2 years ago at the request of the McAuliffe administration after the situation we had in Fredericksburg in the 28th House District, where there was, I think, about 40 ballots that came in late that didn't get counted, but might have actually changed the outcome of that race. And it was a bill I carried, and I'm glad to see you picked up, which is why I co-sponsored it. But I would, if the patrons are okay with that, move that we incorporate that bill and those changes into the bill.
And what would it take to make the additional changes to the bill to add the technical changes from the Locke bill?
Mr. Chairman, since we'll be doing a substitute to incorporate all of the different patrons, we can include the substance as well from these different bills. Yep.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Senator Servell moved to incorporate Senator Reeves' bill. Senator Sproul seconded it. All in favor of?
We'll let him
Explain
just
again
do
what that, just briefly, what Senator Reeves' bill does,
Senator-
extra days, or what that means?
Doesn't it say that if it's received for the second business day, for 2 days after?
That'll give you some.
Thanks.
Right.
Military one's home as well. I see.
Okay. Okay, Senator Servell moved and Senator Sproul seconded that we incorporate the Reeves bill into the substitute. Are there, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, are there members of the public that would like to speak?
Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Chairman, I had one else.
Okay, Senator Servell, then Senator.
I'm sorry. I had one other amendment that I wanted to see if the patrons would explore, and I apologize for not bringing it up ahead of time, but as this came up, it just occurred to me. Delegate Krizak's carrying a bill, which I wanted to put in, but I had 63 bills and didn't think I needed to increase my total anymore. But one of the things that's always bothered me about absentee voting, and one of the things I've discovered amongst people voting absentee, is that many people today don't have stamps, especially younger voters. They just don't. They do everything electronic. They don't mail things. And one of the big impediments I've found to people getting their ballot back is to put a stamp actually on the return envelope, because people don't keep them at home and have time. And I know there is another bill pending to simply say that the envelope coming back has to be a postage prepaid envelope. And I don't know if the
Senator
patrons consider
Servell,
that friendly. It
do
doesn't
you
look
want
like
this
it.
bill to have to go to finance?
No. Well, Mr. Chairman, I would just point out it's a local cost. It's not a state cost. So it'd be a local government problem. And Fairfax
Well,
County is one of the wealthiest jurisdictions in the country, so I don't care.
Senator Peake, then Senator Sproul.
Mr. Chairman, did we include Senator Mason's 696 in this? It is.
Yes.
Okay, that's 21. That was it.
Okay, Senator Sproul.
Mr. Chairman, I'm hoping that we don't consider what my desk maker have says. The young folks, they got to do something. Good Lord. We don't want to write the name no more. We don't want them to do nothing. They got to do something. Let them buy a damn stamp.
Okay, are there others in the committee? Are there others in the committee that wish to, Senator Bell?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure how to follow that, but I'm a strong supporter of the overall bill and also Senator Reeves' bill. As a retired military member, I've served in combat zones. It's difficult for our military members to vote. It also is often delayed from remote locations getting those ballots moved forward into the voting location. And frankly, I think it's an atrocity. Those who are in harm's way serving on our behalf would not have their vote counted. So I thank you for putting this up and urge everyone to vote for it.
Okay, are there members of the public that would like to speak in favor of this bill? Just come on up and line up. Tell us who you are and where you're from, and
I'm not sure I'm going to speak in favor or against. How you're going to, I'm Barbara Tabb. I'm with the Electoral Board Association of Virginia. We're the guys in those localities tasked with doing the elections. What my plea to you is, all of these are wonderful things. We have got to have money to implement this. There's no financial impact on these. And before you go forward, it's nice to say that it's a localities problem, but we need the money to be able to implement this so we're not the new Florida.
yes, ma'am. I put in a budget amendment that's kind of ambiguous based on past fiscal impacts. I realize there's no fiscal impact on these bills, but there are, in the past, there have been fiscal impacts that have been all over the place. I recognize there'll be some local costs, and that's why I put in a budget amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Senators. I'm Trish Sifka. I'm from Louisa County, but I'm here from the Central Virginia chapter of MOA, the Military Officers Association, and we're here to speak on behalf of, for the JLC. This was a very high initiative for them, as they have been working since 2013 to try to enfranchise the military overseas voters, and just think it's really important if we could just move forward in trying to help them, because so many ballots come in after because of snail mail and how it's returned. And if you even look at, I have a number, November 2018 election, the SB reported over 6,770 absentee ballots were returned after polls closed and were not counted. So again, I'm here to speak with the JLC's initiative and thank Senator Reeves and Senator Bell, spoken to Senator Serovell, who offered it before, and hope you move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Carol Naga with the League of Women Voters, senators and members of the committee. The League has many, many years say people did not have to have an excuse to vote. So we've been waiting for this, and I'm very pleased to have the addition of the veterans in the military to make that possible. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Chairman Dees. My name is Grinley Johnson. I'm the Deputy Secretary of Administration, and I'm here to say that, first of all, I would like to thank senators for presenting this bill. Thank you very much. And the governor's office is in favor of Senator Locke's bill. We've not had a chance to give a position on Senator Powell's bill, but we will take a look at it. But we are in favor of Senator Locke's bill with the technical amendments. Any bill that moves must have those technical amendments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, again, my name is Kenneth Gilliam with New Virginia Majority, and we support both bills. We believe that making access to participating in democracy more accessible is it's good for not only for our country, but also for our Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anna Scholl with Progress Virginia. We also support both bills, and I would echo what my colleague from New Virginia Majority said.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Kirk Showalter, the General Registrar for the City of Richmond, speaking on behalf of the Voter Registrars Association of Virginia. We have been diligently working, as you all know, to implement the changes in procedures for this November's election that were enacted last year. These bills, of course, will be an expansion, and we are very happy to hear that Senator Deeds is introducing a budget amendment to address some of the cost of the localities, because that was one of our greater concerns of the bill. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate it.
My concern is without state funding, you'll just have an uneven application of the law. You know, it will work very well in some places, but not well at all in other places.
And we fully agree with you, sir. Some people, and especially Fairfax, who have done large amounts of absentee voting over years already. Other places are still trying to get it right, so we appreciate that. One concern that we do have with Senator Reed's addition is not the late arrival of an absentee ballot and counting it, but waiting until the 2 days before the state board has to determine the results. If you're going to expand the acceptance of late arriving absentee ballots from Uocava voters, we don't know what the scope will be, but many of these have to be hand counted. So to allow only 1 day for processing, we would hope that maybe amend it to 4 days in advance and give us some time to count them properly without haste-making waste. So we would ask you to take that into consideration.
How many days do you need?
4.
Mr. Brown, make that motion to amend
Okay. Is there a second? Okay, all in favor of that change, changing the 2 days to 4 days? Senator Reeves' motion. Say aye.
Aye. Question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Spruill.
Then would that 4 days still be in the time frame of the canvassing? Would it still be in the time frame?
Well, I believe that it would have to be implemented on a separate standalone basis, because we're still by law required to report the absentee results election night. And then these we'd have to work out the administrative details for this. But
No, ma'am, that's not my question.
I'm sorry, I
saying
wasn't
that
clear.
usually after the canvass is over with, after election night, after the canvass is over with, we say, hey, the canvassing has been done. Yes, person won a loss because the canvass is done. So if you do the 4 days, then would that be after the deadline for the canvassing?
Oh, yes, sir. And as proposed, the bill would also be after the deadline for canvassing. The state board typically waits, 2 to 3 weeks after election day to do the canvass, and these, as I understand it on the bill, could be counted if they're received as late as 2 days before the state board's canvassing. We're just asking for receipt 4 days before the state board's
Mr. Chairman,
canvassing.
Senator Sproul.
then in that case, let's take it in the case of the city of Norfolk. In that case, then, so because a lot of the military base and whatever in Norfolk, in that case, then you have to wait 2 or 3 weeks after the election over with because you could have a large number from Norfolk to vote. So when in the other parts of the state, you could do it right off earlier. But in the city of Norfolk, in the Hampton Roads area, you got to wait 3 weeks because you don't know what that outcome would be. So even though I would have won on election night, I would have won after you canvassing. So I'm saying, well, I won the election night, supposedly. The canvassing came in, I won that supposedly. But I still have, I don't know yet because I got to wait for another 2 weeks for that military vote to come in.
Sir, that is up to this august body to make
I
that
can't support that.
determination.
Mr. Chairman, I thought that you were saying 2 days, and then you're going to wait. I don't want to wait for 2 weeks after the election over with for some military thing to come in. Because right now, with Donald Trump in the section, I can't trust that.
Senator Eben.
And I don't know if this is for, well, I guess it is for you rather than Senator Reeves. I misunderstood, I guess, Senator Reeves' original bill that was rolled in. I thought we were voting on accepting military and overseas votes for a period of a few more days.
That's right.
Does this mean that someone who's overseas could find out on election night that a candidate lost by 2 votes and be encouraged to return? Meg can answer it better for perhaps.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, Senator Eben, it does require that the ballot had been postmarked before the election day.
One more question. Are all military and APO votes, do they use postmarks? Because not every U.S. post office seems to. That's great. Okay.
Okay, I think we were considering Senator Reeves' change from 4 days to 2 days. 2 to 4. 2 days to 4 days, I apologize. And that would actually shorten the period of time, I think, for the ballots to come in, Senator Sproul.
One more question, Mr. Chair.
Senator Eben.
Does that mean that they would come in before they'll come in after the local canvass, but just get added in? Is that correct?
It is my understanding, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got the change from 2 days to 4 days. All in favor of that?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I have one more question. I think
I
on this
apologize,
subject.
Senator Servo.
Just so I'm clear about how this works, on election night, do we know how many of the outstanding absentee votes that have not come back are military or overseas? Do we know that number, or do we have to wait for the envelope to come back to know who it was?
This gets very technical. But we wouldn't know election night because the CAP officers have done their report, and that information has to get entered into the state system. But shortly thereafter, we could pull a report to show which military and overseas ballots had been cast by the election officers. It would take a couple of days to do it.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Servo.
Here's what I'm getting at, is that, say on election night, somebody wins by 100 votes, and there's 1,000 absentee ballots out that didn't come back. Is there a way to know that only 50 of them are potentially ones that are going to get counted for that 4-day period or not?
Presuming that the general registrar has entered the absentee ballots as they come back into the state VERIS system, which is the habit and expectation, we can pull a report that shows which Uocava voters have not been returned as of election night.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We've got the proposal, the change from 2 days to 4 days. All in favor? Aye. Senator
Mr. Chair,
McClellan.
it looks like there's someone standing there that wanted to comment on this particular point.
On this, Dr. Wheeler, are you talking about this point?
This point,
Okay.
Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman, just Clarabelle Wheeler, former member of the State Board of Elections, not now, just a citizen voting. But the Code of Virginia as it stands now requires that the State Board of Election confirm, certify, declare the winners on the third Monday, a Monday after the election, which means that the Department of Elections has to have all of the ballots counted, all of the canvass data sent in. If you talk about 4 days, you've got to make sure, are you talking about weekend days, business days? Because the state board announces the results on Monday. So you have to back out the numbers from a Monday. I'm not speaking for or against. I just want everybody to understand what's done.
And maybe I made a bad decision when I said it was all right to incorporate this bill into the general absentee bill. Why don't we back off of that? Is there a motion to take this
I move
bill?
to reconsider my motion.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay. Now, let's put all the general absentee voting bills together with the technical amendments we've agreed to, which come from Senator Locke's bill. Is there a motion that we offer that as a substitute?
Yes.
Okay, second. Okay, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Now
we've got this. Yeah, we've got the sub, the general absentee, and we've heard people that wanted to speak in favor of it. We need to hear from people who want to speak in opposition.
We heard that too, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Eben.
I don't want to belabor it, but I did want to ask a question of the Department of Elections, or if someone who knows this, maybe a registrar. It was brought to me by one of my registrars that the applications for the absentee ballot right now have to be applied for and signed, and they were suggesting that maybe you don't need to have them a full application. Is that in this section of the code? Is that affected by this? The part of the bill, perhaps on lines 190, 91, or elsewhere in there, that talks about an application being signed by the applicant in the presence of the registrar. I was just wondering, for these in-person absentee votes, if there's a reason, if they don't have to have an excuse that they're affirming that they have to be signed, or if that will be changing at all.
Mr. Chair, Senator Eben, if I understand Senator Eben's question correctly, he's asking whether a person who's offering to vote absentee in person has to complete this application. And the answer is that in 701.1 is where we talk about absentee voting in person, and they just have to provide their name and residence address in which they're offering to vote.
Thank you.
They won't have to provide any reasons or anything.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Well, then the substitute is before you. All in favor of reporting, vote yea on the electronic voting machine. Those opposed, vote nay.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Okay, the bill's reported. Congratulations. Let's go ahead and do Senator Reeves' Bill 455 that we tried to dispose of in a separate way. I think everybody understands the bill. We probably want to change that 2 days to 4 days, and we're talking about business days with the way the bill's written, aren't we, Meg?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Currently encoded does say business days.
Do I hear a motion that we amend the 2 days to 4 days?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. No. Okay, it shortens the time period but I understand, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I quite understand. Tell me what we're doing on the 2 day to 4 day and what is going on. If you could explain that, Mr. Senator Reeves.
Is my mic on? So, Mr. Chairman, Senator Peake, what that's doing is it's telling them before that last day that the state board meets to give the results, they had 2 days in which to get that. They had 2 days grace period there, business days. That's cutting it down to give the registrars 4 days before the state board meets, which cuts the time pursuant down, that 5 p.m. time that it has to be in there. Now, all these absentee ballots that would come in from the military. Two things. One, we know who's casting absentee ballots because we all chase them, right? So we know what's coming and what hadn't come in because we all send letters to them during the election. Now, I understand where Senator Sproul is because he's got this bill it would change that, but it would only make the exception in that they would still have to be postmarked before 5 p.m. And the change we just voted on would be on the 4th business day before the state board meets. So the state board is going to meet, whether or not it would have an outcome that could possibly change the election. It's the same risk you take with provisional ballots and whether or not the board's going to approve some of those. So I think the bigger issue here is, are we going to allow ballots that have been properly postmarked prior to the election that, to no fault of their own, the veteran has had something happen, some conflict, something slowed that snail mail down. It gets there. It's still going to be counted prior to the final rendering of the outcome of the election by the state board. We're making a policy decision. Do we want to count that or not count that? And I think that's what my colleague Senator Bell was talking about, having served in uniform, is for all intents and purposes, I'm serving overseas. I requested my absentee ballot. I sent it out. I put a stamp on it. It's postmarked prior to when it's supposed to be sent over here. There has to be a deadline and a date. This just closes that deadline and date till 4 days before the state board meets. That's what this does. It allows military to still have their votes counted if it comes in after the election date. So we can either live with it or not live with it. But I think we disenfranchise our military when we tell them their vote comes late. And even though you did everything possible to get it here, you couldn't do it.
Okay, are there any questions? Are there, and I realize some people have already spoken to this bill, and we remember your comments, but if you didn't speak and you're in favor of this bill, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Carrie Ann Alford, Policy Director for the Department of Veteran Services, also Staff Administrator for the Joint Leadership Council. The agency has no position on this bill, but to clarify for the council, and I can speak on their behalf, they're fine with the 4-day adjustment. We are trying to help those voters become enfranchised who have the military posts. So moving the 4 days up would still, you have to have the envelope postmarked on or before Election Day, and it does still have to arrive before that 4 days. If it arrives 3 days before, then that doesn't get counted. We're not sitting around waiting for Yokava votes or active military votes to come in and count them. We still have the deadline. If it comes in after that deadline, then they're still late. We're just giving a little bit more grace time to help our active duty military be able to vote in Virginia. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Sproul.
Since I'm statewide, I'm going to support it.
Okay, are there others in the public who would like to be heard? Maybe have a contrary view. Okay, the bill is before you.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Open the roll. Vote yes if you're for it. Vote no if you're against it. Close the roll.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay, the bill reports. Okay, the next, Senator Peterson's not here yet, so agriculture's still going on. Senator Sproul, you've got a couple of bills. You want to take them up? Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, SB 43.
Senate Bill 43.
Mr. Chairman, I believe there's an amendment on that. We have on that one.
Okay, do I hear a motion on the amendment? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the amendment's adopted. The bill as amended is before you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, remember, this legislation is a privacy issue bill. Currently, campaigns can require a list from the register of people who have requested absentee ballots. I assume those lists are picked up by the campaign in order to send them to campaign literature. As we have seen in our neighborhood and states, this can lead to a campaign fraud. And what I am concerned about is that the elderly who request ballots could be targeted of people since they are identified and are not being able to physically make it to the polls. What happened was that those who request the absentee ballot, Mr. Chairman, what they were doing, they would get that list and they go to their homes of those elderly folks and try to persuade them or either help them fill out the absentee ballots. So what we're trying to do is keep it from fraud from anybody, no matter what party they may be, that they're going down to the registrar's office and get a list of those who ask for an absentee ballot, then go to their home and try to persuade them to vote one way or other. That's what it's all about.
The bill, straightforward, it simply makes, okay. It prohibits the release of lists of absentee voters. Are there questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, as looking out for all the statewide military voters, I asked the senator how military voters are overseas, chances are they don't have a lot of information. Without being able to get this absentee list and correspond with them, is there a way that they can inform and send information to those military voters?
Mr. Chairman, on that particular case, then if the military voters who are elsewhere, then that would preclude you or me from going to their home, especially the elderly, to persuade them, maybe, to persuade them how they should vote, or either check, vote for them, and send it back in. And that's the problem we've been having, that they get the list from the registrar's office, going to the elderly, to their homes, and sometimes to persuade them and tell them how to vote, to send it in.
Okay. Is this a problem that you've seen specific to Chesapeake, or do you think, have you heard about it in other places?
Hampton Roads. I don't know about Hampton Roads. Now, I was told that from the other state, Northern Virginia, different. So I can't speak for them.
The other state.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Senator Bell.
I guess I'm missing something, but if the absentee voter is a military voter overseas, if a campaign can't get their information, how are they going to know to send them any information about it? Because frankly, these are military people, and I don't know, I've been overseas. I was in Europe for 4 years. I didn't know much about this until I got that information from them, and it helped me make an informed decision. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator
To
Spruill.
Senator Bell, now let me be me for a minute. I am that way anyway. I'm not hiding behind the military. You want to school? I'm not hiding behind military. I'm concerned about those who live in your neighborhood, who live in my neighborhood, the elderly who wants the absentee ballot, and you are going to their homes and trying to persuade them how they should vote. That's the main issue we have. I do not have any problem with the military folks.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm having a problem if you go and taking this main thing and going to persuade folks how to vote because they ask for an absentee ballot and they're elderly, and you go and trying to persuade them. Regardless of which party you may be at, it should not be.
Okay, are you through?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say I understand. The way this is drafted, I think the net captures more than just the folks, but I certainly feel his concerns.
Okay, Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, it seems to me when you register by your address, not by where your absentee address is. And so if your mail is being forwarded that way, it's going to get to you. So candidates are communicating with the individuals that are registered to vote. This doesn't change who's registered to vote. So I don't see how the military wouldn't have access to information if you're corresponding with all the individuals in your district. I think what Senator Spruill is trying to prevent is from people that are requesting to get an absentee ballot from them being bombarded by individual candidates, individual parties, different than how everybody else is being bombarded because they've received an absentee ballot.
Thank you, my lawyer.
Yeah, are there additional?
My retainer is pretty good for you too.
Are there additional questions or comments from the committee? Are there those in the public who would like to speak in favor of this bill? Are there those who have a view that's not in favor of this bill? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Regretfully, I stand to speak against this fine bill, but in favor of the patron. I love the patron. General Registrar offices are public spaces. I'm concerned from a transparency issue. We don't want to know how people are voting, but I think it's important from transparency to know who is voting so we can make sure there's not fraud and those types of things. General Registrar offices are public spaces. Anyone coming to the office to vote in person absentee is visible and can be noted. This is the same as a voting polling location on election day. Voting history, secondly, voting history is a public record. The request for absentee ballot, whether mailed or voting in person, must be open to the public for the assurance of the public trust. Third, all requests, mailed or requested in person, must be an open process. The list of those voters requesting absentee ballots must be public to reduce the possibility of double voting by an individual. Public trust that the voting system is accurate must be maintained. The integrity of our voting system cannot be taken on faith. It must be verifiable in writing. This bill prohibits the Board of Election from releasing the list of absentee ballots and runs contrary to transparency and accountability principles, which unfortunately helps to facilitate voter fraud. While the sanctity of the ballot box is a pillar to American democracy, general election participation is public information. No problem here in need of fix, another government solution to a problem that doesn't exist, in my personal opinion. Thank you.
Yes, Senator Chase, for there to be, I'm trying to fit the double voting issue you spoke about. That would almost require a conspiracy between the voter and the registrar, wouldn't it?
I would hope not. But I know sometimes, like with my daughter who votes absentee, sometimes there can be confusion over if someone votes absentee and then they, for instance, she'll come home and she's like, oh, I'm here, I can vote in person, just verifying that process all the way through and making sure it's transparent so we don't have double voting.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And I apologize. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Megan Ryan. I'm with the Virginia Coalition for Open Government, and I am an admitted novice when it comes to election law, so I'm not here to say whether there's going to be fraud or any of that. It's just that pretty much any time we see that here is a public record that has previously been made available to the public, and there has not been any documented other than anecdotal incidents of problems that have come from the release of this information, then we want to see this information still publicly available. So we would urge you that this not be passed. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Wheeler.
Barbara Wheeler, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Albemarle County. I would reiterate several comments that have been made. The expectation that we have a secret ballot, I think we all would agree. If I vote, I want to know how I'm voting, and it's nobody else's business unless I choose to tell them. Requesting an absentee ballot is a public record. It goes through the registrar's office, it's recorded, it's put onto the VERA system. It's been sent out. If it returns, it comes back into the public document for the absentee ballots. If someone requests an absentee ballot, that becomes part of their voting history in much the same way as the voting record, as has already been stated. That's a public record. It is transparency of who is voting and how they're voting. As we're coming into, there are many bills, excuse me, let me rephrase that sentence. There are many bills before you in this General Assembly that would increase the absentee voting period, some of them quite lengthy. We have no idea how many people are going to vote absentee if you increase that time period. We can look at what other states have done, but as Virginians, we think we're pretty special, and we may not do the same thing as North Carolinians or Coloradans or anybody else. Registrars and the public who support polling places on Election Day need to know how many people have already voted. Because if you have 50% of your population already voted absentee, Well, maybe you don't need to have so many election workers on election day, either election officers or poll watchers or people handing out sample ballots. We need to know where these absentee ballots, in terms of where these citizens are voting, so we know how to staff in a coordinated method. I think this goes back to transparency, with all due respect, Senator Sproul, and it's the same in metropolitan areas as it is in rural areas. We need to know who's voting absentee so we can track that ballot. Thank you. And make sure it comes back.
Thank you very much. Are there others? Senator Sproul, do you want to wrap it up?
Yes, sir. Everything she has said is true. We are not getting at that. What we're getting at is the campaign, though we're talking about people who are campaigning. But everything they have spoken, Mr. Chairman, they're right. But we're talking about campaigning those who are running for office, going to the registrar's office and getting a list of the elders who have sent in and requested absentee ballot and going to their home to assist them on how to vote. That's what my problem is. That's the only thing about it.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I think we understand.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Boysko, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have polled my jurisdictions in Loudoun County and Fairfax County and have gotten feedback that they do not support this initiative, although I certainly appreciate my colleague for presenting this bill, but have gotten strong opposition, and I will not be able to support this.
Okay. Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, I think what Senator Sproul has articulated through this piece of legislation is not that the public doesn't have access to know who has voted. It is the public being able to disproportionately impact people that have requested to vote by absentee ballots. So for actions of this body, we're expanding the ability to get an absentee ballot, the time frame. It is going to expand those individuals who choose to vote that way from being bombarded, as opposed to those who just choose to go into the booth on that first Tuesday in November. So, Mr. Chairman, I think that this is a very measured approach. It is very reasonable. It actually protects the integrity of voters and does not prohibit the public from being able to access who voted after the election, just like they do for every other individual who goes in and fills in a bubble or flips a switch on that Tuesday in November. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'd move that the bill be reported.
Is there a second? Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, open the roll.
Ayes 7, noes 8.
Ayes 7, noes 8. Senator Sproul, you have another bill.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 46. Absentee voting application for form content. Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 46 removes the requirement that a person apply for an absentee ballot, providing supporting information regarding the reason. Currently, those who apply for an absentee ballot are prompted to choose a reason for requesting an absentee ballot, and there are 20 exemptions. Mr. Chairman, that most of you would know that a lot of times, if you're required to do that, a lot of times people just tell a lie. I'm going to the hospital next week. They check it. So all it's doing is just remove that part, that requirement that a person apply for an absentee ballot for supporting. This application will still be required to provide the reason, but just to require the reason.
What I wonder, Senator Sproul, in light of the fact that we passed your bill and Senator Howe's bill and Senator Stewart's bill and Senator Locke's bill provide for no absentee voting, doesn't that do away with the need for this? Okay.
Yes, sir. I believe so. Is that right? Yes, sir. My lawyer said yes.
Okay. But if that bill fails, then
But Mr. Chairman, I'd rather have that bill to pass, and I draft mine. I'd rather have that one to pass. If this is included in that bill, Mr. Chairman, I would go with that.
Well, this bill isn't word for word included in that bill, but it does away with the need for this bill probably.
Correct. If SB 111, as we reported out, were to pass the General Assembly, you wouldn't need SB 46.
Okay, you want, so the committee, if the bill's before the committee, we can either decide to.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Eben.
Mr. Chairman, I think that if the combined no excuse absentee passes, well, we don't need it, it might be a good piece of insurance to pass this with an enactment clause or not with an enactment clause, because there's no harm in this bill if the other bill passes. Meg, if this bill were to pass and the combined other bill passes, there's no harm. So I would just say that, move that we pass this, and, if, and people can vote the same way or however they want.
Okay, are there people in the public who would like to speak in favor of this bill? Or people who would like to speak in opposition to this bill? Senator Eben made a motion, but I haven't heard a second.
Second.
Okay. A motion and a second. The bill's before you is Senator
Mr. Chairman.
McDougal. I apologize.
Just my understanding is that whichever legislation the governor would sign last, so even though if this one was signed second in line, it would still have the other provisions in it talking about no absentee voting. So I don't know how that would apply because some of the provisions are not the same. Is it not the better idea to carry it over for the year, which would have it be still in the body of the committee that could be considered, and then you don't get into that box? I was not supportive of the other issue, but I don't want to, that's going to pass, I don't want us to
No, I understand
have
what you're saying.
inconsistent policies.
Absolutely. What's your pleasure,
Mr.
Senator?
Chairman, may I ask my lawyer a question?
No.
You may, certainly may.
Do I have your assurance that you're going to vote for that fine bill that was put out by Janet Howard?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not voting for that other bill.
Mr. Chairman, that'd be fine.
Mr. Chair,
That'd be fine, okay.
Jen, go ahead.
your other lawyer has advice for you.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Senator McClellan.
Mr. Chair, I think what we have seen so far is that the chair of this committee and the chair of the House committee are probably pretty good at communicating, and I think are also pretty good at communicating with the governor's policy office. I think if we have this bill as an insurance policy that is not needed, that conversations between those three folks will figure out how to deal with that. And I would recommend not carrying it over because if everything fails and this is carried over, it will not be in effect for the 2020 election, which I think the patron wants to happen.
I'm going to follow you. I'm my lawyer. So I want to go with my bill, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we've got a motion to report and a second on the table. Any further discussion? If not, open the roll. Okay, close the roll. The bill passes.
That's 12 noes 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator,
if I may, before the senator leaves the podium, I would like to ask, having voted on the prevailing side by which we failed to pass Senate Bill 43, which was the previous bill, correct?
Right.
I would like to ask that please be reconsidered.
Is that a recorded vote? Okay. Shall the bill be reconsidered? Okay, the bill is back before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I really apologize for trespassing on the committee's time and bringing the bill up again. However, I believe that the senator's bill has real merit. And what I wanted to do was come back and ask a question of Meg, if I may, counsel, Mr. Chair. And that is there a way that we can both make the information that is publicly available in terms of the numbers of absentee ballots so that the public understands campaigns understand people have access to the information of the numbers of those ballots that have been cast for planning purposes, election day purposes, staffing and resource purposes. But that at the same time, you have the ability to protect the identity of the person, which is what the senator has attempted to do. And I'm just curious to know if that's possible.
I mean, it's, Mr. Chairman, Senator Vogel, it's certainly possible. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm sort of struggling to come up with the right words, but you could do a substitute to carve out the public release of what you don't want and allow the release of what you do
You
want.
want this bill to go by for the day and maybe see if you can work out a
Mr. Chair, I would like to save the bill. I think the bill has merit. And if there's a way to address that one issue, I would be wholly supportive.
Mr. Chairman, then it could be okay if we go by for the day?
I make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, the bill's by for the day. Okay, I forgot to announce in the beginning that one of Senator Evans' bills is going to go by for the day, and Senator Sasol's bill is going to go by for the day. Senator Evans, you've got some more bills, though.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The bill that's going by for the day of Senator Evans is 399. Senator Sasol's 166 is going by as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first bill is Senate Bill 859.
Okay, Senate Bill 859, please give Senator Evans your attention.
This is a clarification. Current law permits registered voters to use an emergency voting procedure in the event they're hospitalized. However, hospitalization only applies to licensed medical and behavioral health facilities in Virginia and any comparable hospital in the District of Columbia or states contiguous to Virginia. So you have to be absent from your city or county. That's easy, simple. But if you're hospitalized in Delaware, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, or wherever else, you cannot vote via this hospital emergency procedure. So one of my registers brought it to my attention that there was a voter who asked for it. I can answer more questions about this emergency absentee ballot procedure, but I think the key policy decision is, does it matter whether the hospital is in D.C. or Delaware? And that's the bill.
Okay, are there questions of the committee for Senator Evans?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator McDougal.
Senator Eben, does the bill require that you be absent from your jurisdiction, which is currently what is required?
You can vote by hospital emergency if you're, I believe it's in your jurisdiction or absent. It just allows the medical emergency. Yeah, because we have a, Meg, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you could be in a hospital in your jurisdiction or in one that's contiguous to Virginia.
Mr. Chair, as someone who had a family member that had to use this provision this year, that is correct. It is if you're hospitalized within 7 days of the election, so it's after the absentee ballot period has expired, but you were hospitalized and you wouldn't have had any way of knowing that, this applies, but it doesn't, you can be across the street from where you would vote, but if you're hospitalized, you can't get there, and a doctor has to certify both on the application or on the application for the ballot that you are hospitalized and cannot go vote in person.
Thank you, Senator McClellan. Okay, are there questions of Senator Evans? Are there those in the public who would like to speak in favor of the bill?
Good afternoon again. Kirk Showalter, General Registrar for the City of Richmond, speaking on behalf of the Voter Registrars Association of Virginia. We support this bill, particularly in border localities, not just in Northern Virginia, but in Southwest or down on the North Carolina line. There is a problem if somebody goes into the hospital out of state. So we would ask that the committee move this bill forward, and thank the Senator for introduction.
Okay, are there others? Or is there anyone who has a contrary view? Okay, the bill's before you.
Move the report, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, open the roll. Okay, the bills
That's 14-1.
reported. You have another bill.
I do. This is a campaign finance reform bill. Virginia is one of 5 states that has no limits on, I think it's on businesses that contribute. And what this bill does is it empowers all Virginians to have an influence over elections, not just corporations and the very wealthy. It puts some limits on the contributions being $2,500 a year for individuals, $5,000 a year for a political action committee, and then for statewide candidates, $5,000 a year for individuals or $10,000 a year for political action committees to donate to those candidates. I have a budget amendment in to fund compliance enforcement, and I believe it also just says that you cannot have a corporation contribute under any circumstance. So the two kinds of people would be individuals and PACs could contribute.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sproul.
Could you shut that door for me? Mr. Chairman, my question is this. I'm hearing what you're saying, but knowing that during our campaign contribution, whether it's from a corporate or otherwise, knowing that I've heard from you and on my side of the aisle numerous times that North Virginia really support the state because they are 40% from North Virginia and all the money is in North Virginia. Now, what you're saying is this. When you and North Virginia can raise money like you want to because you have all the big business in North Virginia, but those of us who are in poor tidewater, who cannot raise the kind of money that you raise in North Virginia, then so my question is, I would love to take your suggestion if it meant for Hampton Roads, but make it half the amount for Northern Virginia because all the money in Northern Virginia, we would not be able to get elected. So,
Well,
so
you're statewide.
I'm agreeing. I'm not me because I'm statewide, but I'm saying, but overall, because the majority of the funds who are given to candidates from Northern Virginia, and y'all raise a lot of money there. I try my best to raise $100,000. I can't do it. I live in Tidewater. They can raise $300,000 and $400,000 easy. So what you're saying, if you would apply that to Hampton Roads, yes. But in North Virginia, you apply half that to North Virginia because y'all can raise money and we cannot. Any problem with that?
Well, I would just suggest that actually it levels the playing field in that if I had a wealthy $10,000 donor in McLean or something, that they would only be able to give me a $2,500 contribution rather than give me $10,000 if they don't know folks in Tidewater as well. So I would think it levels the playing field for people to encourage them to solicit individuals at perhaps lower amounts wherever they live.
So this basically imposes federal-style limits on Virginia campaigns.
That's correct.
Okay. Are there other, Senator Peake?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right. And I've looked at these. We got several of these. Is it my understanding that Mr. Chairman, Senator Evan, so let's say there's, a billionaire in Charlottesville, and he wants to give $2,500 to his candidates in Charlottesville, so he does that. Can he then give $1 million to the what's y'all's Democratic Party? They don't seem to be listed in any of these.
To party committees?
Yeah. What did y'all state? DPV, Democratic Party of Virginia. Could he then give $1 million to the Democratic Party of Virginia, and then they can give all the money they want to any candidate they want?
Well, this is to individual candidates. That is an amendment that I would accept. But this is just dealing with the candidate committees. That's where we are.
That's right. So it limits.
You do have a point, but this is the step that I put forward. I know that in other states, in North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia, they have these kinds of limits, but I'd have to find out about state parties if you want me to take.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
Yes, sir, and Senator Evans. Yeah, this is the whole problem with what we've got at the federal level. So they give $2,500 to the candidate, and then they give $1 billion to a political action committee that is not controlled by anybody, and they run whatever ads they want to run, and they don't even have to report the contributions. And is that what we're going to end up with here? And so they can give it to the Democratic Party of Virginia Or there may be a couple of people with $100,000 give $10,000 to the Republican Party of Virginia, and we're not going to be able to track that, which is what we're having currently. And so you're going to limit it to the people that report it and then make it unreportable and unlimited to the parties.
No, the state committees, I believe, do have to report their donations. There are these things that do independent expenditures. I don't know how they work in Virginia. These super PACs, from whether they're out of state or not, or corporations who make independent expenditures under the Supreme Court ruling that rule the corporations were people, which is another matter. But this just has to do with candidates and seeing who gives to candidates directly.
Senator Boysko.
Thank you. I would just like some clarification. Lines 37 through 44, prohibition on indirect contributions. Could we have council help clarify what that says?
This just puts in language to make sure that someone isn't going to try to funnel it through another entity.
So to a certain extent, does that answer Senator Peak's question or concern?
Mr. Chairman, no, because that's, if you look at the definitions in these, it's talking about where the board of directors or the supervisors or the directors of the committee are the same people, like Mark Peak sets up people for Virginia, and I'm the one who's directing it. It does not address political parties at all. Okay. The ones I've looked at, Mr. Chairman, do not seem to mention political parties at all.
Senator Eben, I've had a couple of requests from the committee membership that the bill go by for the week. Do you have an objection to that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Then
Chairman.
that bill will go by for the week. Okay. Senator Bell, I understood you wanted your bill, which is on the docket, to be rolled into Senator Peterson's bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so that would mean when we get around to when Peterson's here, we'll wrap 266 into 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, are there other members of the committee that have bills? No, I don't. Okay, are there? I've got a few bills, and Senator Eben, do you want to, or Senator Howell? Senator Eben?
Okay, thanks.
You can take charge. Mr. Chair,
Senator Dietz.
The first bill I've got is Senate Bill 617. It sets standards for the adoption of voter satellite offices by locality governing body. Currently, the establishment of such offices is left to the electoral board, while precincts and polling places are the responsibility of the local governing body. This bill clarifies standards for use and security of voting equipment and ballot security, requires that the location be ADA compliant, and ensures that satellite offices are the equivalent of the office of the general registrar. This is an administration bill.
Are there members of the committee with questions?
Yes.
Senator, go ahead, Senator Peak.
Are there any requirements or guidelines or anything along those lines as to where these satellite offices are going to be set up?
I think that's part of the point of the bill, that it's been up to the local folks to establish, when they wanted to establish satellite offices, and this is to provide some uniformity. But certainly, I'm sure there's somebody here from the administration who can address that more specifically.
Well, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Senator Peak.
I mean, this is allowing the establishment of satellite offices. Are we Do we have satellite offices now? I'm not aware of satellite offices now.
We're going to have the Deputy Commissioner of Elections answer that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jessica Bowman, Deputy Commissioner of Elections. We currently do have satellite offices. However, there are no, the code doesn't speak to requirements of them, how the electoral boards currently establish them. There's no security in there because they haven't been used in the past as frequently. For instance, Fairfax County currently has an average of 10 satellite offices per election. So that currently happens. This bill provides flexibility. So for some elections, if you want them, great. If you don't, don't. So that would be open to public comment with the local governing body.
Mr. Chairman? So based on what I just heard, so a citizen could think that there's a satellite office open one election and show up there to vote, and then that satellite office is not there in a separate election?
So there are public notification requirements in this bill that you have to notify the public when you establish one or when you close down. It just wouldn't make sense for localities have told us that they want flexibility if you have a special election or a primary for, dog catcher that's 1.2%, that locality wouldn't have to spend resources.
So just to follow on the senator's question, if there's a presidential general election, a county might decide to have perhaps 2 satellites, whereas they might decide in a regular election to have 1.
Correct. That would be up to the local governing body.
And I would just point out to members of the committee that this bill does also refer on line 66 to public buildings owned or leased by the county, which I believe was Senator Servel's bill from last session. So it does give them a bit more flexibility there. Is there, if there are no more questions, are there? Yes, Senator Chafin.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask whether one of these satellite offices talks about DMV in the bill. They have mobile offices. Do you envision, this bill envisions that these offices could be on wheels and moving around from place to place?
You can ask Senator Servel about a previous bill he has patroned that would do such things. But no, that language is actually in here because there is still one locality in Virginia that has a registrar's office located in the DMV. If you remember years ago, we used to have registrar's offices actually in the DMV. So this would allow under that circumstance if the DMV wanted to provide that you could do it. But no, we do not imagine rolling around voting equipment in an RV unless Senator Servel reintroduces his bill, and that would be another conversation.
Okay, go ahead, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, as I'm skimming down through these, I guess it's under A, B, and C under 242-7012. Is there any requirement that these satellite offices be open and accessible to the public during their time of operation continuously? I mean, hypothetically, based on this, could you not put your satellite office in a place that was leased by the county, city, or town that was not open to the public?
That could happen now. So that would be all of this is a local governing body decision. So it would be ADA compliant during its open days. They wouldn't have to do all 45 days. They could do the last 21 days, the last 10 days. And we put the public building in there to give localities even more spaces. We heard that, hey, maybe, government buildings do not provide that. So we included the private and public in there. But they would be open to the public for polling hours, or the hours that the governing body sets.
Mr.
Does that answer
Chairman,
your question?
Yes, Senator.
if you could show me that part, I just missed the open to the public.
So it'd be
I don't see that in the language of the
So-
bill. It just says ADA compliant.
So I don't think it would be necessarily open to the public on any given day, except for when it was open as a satellite location and it would act as a polling place does. This is identical language from polling place locations in the code.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I don't-
Senator.
I'm just looking for that language that it required was open for voters to be open to the public. Because, I mean, I could envision if somebody put this in a correctional facility that is not open to the public, is owned by the government.
Mr. Chair, Senator McDougal, the language that Senator McDougal is looking for is actually going to be in 24.2-701.1, where we have a requirement about absentee voting in person being available during regular business hours. And then we've now added language to reference the voter satellite offices that are established pursuant to this new section, which in 701.1, we have language that will require, for purposes of this chapter, such office shall be open a minimum of 8 hours between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on the first and second Saturday immediately preceding. So, yeah.
Do you see it?
That's the one above.
But it's,
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Senator Deeds, as I understand this, current law, which you see on lines 40 through 46, the stricken language C, already authorizes satellite locations, but gives very limited guidance on what those would be. Whereas what all you're doing here is saying, we're still authorizing these satellite locations, but we're giving a little more uniformity on how they be operated across the state.
Mr. Chair, Senator McClellan, you broke the code.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for that clarification. Are there, unless there are other questions from the committee, are there members of the public who'd like to comment for or against, for the bill? Against the bill?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second.
Chairman?
Yes. Senator.
Before we make a final motion, I think maybe to alleviate some of Senator McDougal's concerns, on line 36, where it references that, it says, on 35, it says, for purposes of this chapter, such office shall be open a minimum. I think we could add, shall be open to the public a minimum of 8 hours.
That does not offend me.
Okay, so we have an amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so on line 36, after open, it would read to the public would be the inserted words. So there's a motion for that amendment, a second. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay, so we have the bill amended, and I believe we had a motion for passage of the bill that was seconded. So all in favor of the bill will vote yes.
Punch me, please.
You got it. Senator Deeds.
Okay.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chair, I've got 4 more bills. They're all gubernatorial appointment bills, 43, 44, 45, and 46. Oh, Senator Peterson's here?
I think there was a request that we hold off on the finance bills for the day that we pass those by.
Which ones are those?
All of them. Is that Senator Peterson? Do you have another kind of bill?
No, that was your bill specifically.
No, mine was, the committee voted to pass it by. There was a request that we pass them by for the day. Sarah Howell, do you want to speak to that, or is that just?
Mr. Chairman, a number of us feel that we need to get an opportunity to talk about these bills. And that's sort of on both sides of the aisle, that they have huge implications and there needs further discussion. So the request would be that they be passed by for the day or the week.
All the finance.
Second. Is there a motion for that? Second? Okay. So all in favor of passing them by for the week? Yes, sir.
You've got people
Sure.
that have traveled from all over the state of Virginia.
Okay. Why don't, would it be, Mr. Chair, would it be okay to hear testimony today, or you want to reassume the dais?
I apologize. I thought the bill that was going by for the day was only your bill. I didn't realize.
No, that's what I thought at the time.
I apologize for that. But we can certainly, we've got these finance bills, I think, that Senator Peterson has two of them, Senator Bell has one of them. Senator Bell's requested that his bill be wrapped into whichever one of yours goes forward.
Well, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I have Senate Bill 25, which is my Public Service Corporations bill, which is basically the same bill that I brought forward for the last 4 years. And I do have a substitute on that, and
Okay.
I'll do whatever the committee, but I know I have witnesses here. that
Okay,
traveled.
do you have any problem adopting the substitute and then letting it go by for the day? Okay.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, well, then that means it's even more appropriate that
All
it
right,
go
well,
by.
then-
But,
Well, can we do this? I do have witnesses here.
yes, sir.
All right.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, why don't we do that? Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is Senate Bill 25. This is prohibiting contributions from public service corporations. I do have a substitute which I had intended to distribute. I don't know, in the madness of the last few days, apparently that request did not make it to the staff. But basically, the substitute would limit this to public service corporations, excluding telecom, telecommunications, common carriers, and others that frankly do not have a monopoly status. So it would be focused, frankly, on public utilities. And just so there's no confusion about that, and I think people know from the ambient noise surrounding this issue, that's what this bill is intended.
And Senator Peterson, this would only affect public service corporations that have monopolies.
Yes, sir.
Regulated monopolies.
Yes, sir. And I think I'll just,
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Peake's got a question.
and if we could clarify, how many, in your estimate right now, of those are there?
how many are there that are actually making political donations?
No, how many are there in Virginia?
How many regulated monopolies?
Yes.
Once I would distribute the substitute, I think we're probably talking less than 10, but I don't have the substitute in front of me.
I'm asking general, I'm not.
Yeah.
And then, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Peake.
and then to your question, how many of them are actually making contributions?
I'm only aware of 2.
All right. So this bill applies to two
And-
groups.
I mean, I'll just speak plainly to it. I mean, maybe not everyone was aware of this, but the largest corporate donor to this state over the past, since I've been here, has been Dominion Power. And they have given over $1 million per campaign cycle since I've been in the state legislature. They also hold a regulated monopoly chartered by this state. 4 years ago, we passed a bill called the rate freeze, which, based on impartial, objective analysis, basically transferred $1 billion in excess profits from our ratepayers to Dominion Power, their shareholders. During that same time, they made millions of dollars of political contributions. Now, we can say those are two unrelated events. I'll let history judge. But the bottom line is we need to bring an end to this process. We need to bring an end to this system. My bill attempts to do that. Now, are the words perfect? Probably not. That's why I had a substitute drafted. If someone has a better idea, I'm happy to let them be the author of it. But what we cannot have is a system going forward whereby political donations are dictating these types of policies. I've heard 2 arguments, and by the way, I listen to everybody, and I have friends that work for Dominion. I have friends that work for all these public utility companies. In fact, one of my best friends, my neighbor, is a lineman for utility, for Dominion. Gives me a hard time about this, but we have fun with it. We go to Redskins games together. But I've heard basically 2 arguments against my bill, which is, number one, it's a violation of the First Amendment. And because you're basically telling one corporation you cannot make donations. And my argument to that is, first of all, we have all sorts of restrictions on donations. We restrict the amount of money you can give. We restrict when you can give. For example, you can't give during a legislative session. We restrict, for example, certain states restrict corporations, period, from making donations. So the fact that you can restrict donations and do that and still be within the First Amendment, I think, has long been recognized by the courts. The second issue is frankly salient, and I take this seriously, by the way, the criticisms that you're singling out one business or you're singling out one industry or one company. And I agree, I am. And the bottom line is they have a unique relationship to the consumer. When I get my electric bill, and I not only own my house, I also own my own business. When I get my electric bill, I can't go to a competitor and price compare, okay? I can't decide to shut off electricity and start burning wood or start lighting lamps with candlesticks. I've got one supplier I can use for that industry. So they have a unique relationship with the supplier. They also have a unique relationship to this body. And I think we have to be candid and recognize that the public has been watching this issue and has recognized the amount of money that's been donated to state lawmakers. And I have practiced law in multiple states. I've had cases all over the United States. There was a time before I came here, I was actually an oil and gas attorney. I worked for one of the largest firms in the United States. I'm not aware of a single state where public utilities make political donations. I'm just not aware of it. Now, I may be wrong. Yes, sir.
Question, part 1 and part A. You putting this bill in because you have a personal beef against Dominion and you want us to share in your problems?
No.
Second question, that during this last campaign, we had a gentleman was given $100,000, I think, to Democrats, maybe to some Republicans. So I'm trying to figure out that if it's not just one person, then I'm concerned that why was there no mention that we had a gentleman, I don't know his name, who was given candidates, Democratic candidates that I knew of, $100,000. And their beef was just don't support Dominion. That's all. So my question.
That's my second bill.
Okay, wait a minute. So my question was, so my friend had a beef with Dominion, so he wanted to include me on that. But he has not said nothing about that person who was giving Democratic candidates $100,000. And all they had to do is not say I would support Dominion. So I want to be able to say, let's not do it for any of them. But I don't want to get involved in your personal beef.
Okay. If that's a question, I'm happy to answer it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Sproul. I appreciate that. My second bill basically puts a cap on donations, because I agree with you. Nobody should be able to allow to, particularly to one political candidate or one political candidate committee, make donations over a certain amount. And I've set that as $20,000 per campaign cycle. Again, there's nothing magic about $20,000. It may not be high enough. It may be too high. Federal limits are actually lower than that. But I agree with you. And we've had campaigns in Fairfax County where I felt one person had too much influence.
Well, to trail my last question, then would you, I said it to my friend Evans, would you make it that campaign donation from Northern Virginia folks will be half of what I get in Hampton Roads? Because if you check, anybody can check, that for some reason we do not have the political savvy, we do not have the big corporation in Hampton Roads, and you can check for the last 10 years. What I raised a year and a half in the last 10 years will be peanuts to what anybody from North Virginia raised. And I'm saying, why in the world Sproul cannot raise $100,000 and been up here for 26 years? But if I was in North Virginia, I could raise it in 2 months. So my question is that if you can do that, put a limit on it, could you say that North Virginia, the other Virginia, as I call y'all, could you say that the other Virginia, that we could raise at least double what y'all raised based on you cutting in half? Because if you limit to that, then you won't have no problem in North Virginia. We don't have those kind of contribution or raise money in Hampton Roads. Now, I could run because I'm statewide, but the rest of them can't.
All right. Thank you. Yes. All right. Yes, sir.
And I understand there are people that came from the public that can't drove from miles away and aren't going to come back. Okay? So
I brought some friends.
Understand. So let's hear those people four and those people four first.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Bob Shippey with Sierra Club. It's true, this is not a constitutional issue. It's not a personal beef issue. It's not even a partisan issue. I'm unaware of any other states that will allow a company that is regulated by the body, along with the SEC, to contribute money to the folks that are doing the regulating. It's a right and wrong thing for me, and so we urge you to support the bill. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Frida Cathcart. Senator Sproul, I feel your pain. I'm from Southwest Virginia. I'm here representing myself, but I'm a Dominion shareholder. I became a Dominion shareholder last year when the shares that I inherited from my grandfather from SCANA down in South Carolina was merged with Dominion. And my grandfather was a patriotic man, and he bought those shares in a utility to serve his community. That was back in the days when the monopoly was there because it was the only way that people could get energy to their houses. Dominion and the way it's behaved in the last 5 to 10 years that I'm aware of has betrayed the public's trust by suppressing the economic revolution in renewable energy. I testified at the SCC hearing on Dominion's IPR, where I heard a letter presented to the SCC by 10 corporations, including Adobe Systems, Alchemy Technologies, eBay, Equinox, and Salesforce.com, saying that they need renewable energy, that they have made a promise in the near future to be 100% renewable energy, and Alchemy is on track to be 50% renewable by 2020. And Dominion has used the excuse of data centers to say that they can't go renewable, that they can't participate, that they have to force these fossil fuels on us. And it's not true. And it's a real problem because the boot of Dominion is suppressing our economy. I was at a financial summit in New York City where the presenter said that in order to attract the best talent to corporations, you need to have renewable energy. So I understand there's a lot of focus about this being an environmental bill, but I want you all to be aware that this is a financial bill. You cannot have a monopoly suppress capitalism. So I hope that you will vote for this bill, and I hope that you will vote for bills that help break up the monopoly of Dominion in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Brennan Gilmore. I'm the Executive Director of an advocacy organization called Clean Virginia. We are very much in support of SB 25 and SB 2266 as introduced by Senator John Bell and Chap Peterson. I think Senator Peterson has articulated very well the rationale for this bill. I would only add that similar prohibitions exist on utility monopolies in 28 states across the country, and we believe it's high time that Virginia join this.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peake.
Could I ask him a question while he's here? Brendan, yes, I met with you in my office and discussed this with you a year or so ago, and very interested in Clean Virginia, what y'all are doing. Do you have a number of what Clean Virginia contributed in 2018 or donated to candidates in 2018 and 2019?
I do not have that number off the top of my head, but I'm happy to provide it to you.
And where does Mr. Chairman?
Senator Peake.
Yeah. Where does Clean Virginia get its money?
All of our money for the Clean Virginia Political Action Committee comes from our board chair, Michael Bills, who I believe has been mentioned a couple of times.
And do you know how much money Mr. Bills has donated in political campaigns in 2018 or 2019?
I believe it's in the environment of $2 million.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gilmore.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Emily Little, and I'm a resident of Charlottesville, Virginia, and I am a mother, and I am an emergency room nurse. So not my typical venue. Usually I'm got one on a hip and trying to make sure nobody bleeds. I want the voices of Virginians to matter, not just a few voices of a few corporations. That is why I support SB 25. Public service corporations, including utility monopolies, should not be able to contribute money to the General Assembly. Dominion Energy gives the largest amount of money to Virginia's General Assembly. It is then your job as the General Assembly to regulate Dominion Energy. I think this makes it complicated to regulate. I want to walk you through a scenario where say this applied to the emergency room, okay? When I am employed as an emergency room nurse, the hospital pays my salary. What if instead the patients paid my salary? And so instead of triaging you on whether you have your airway, whether you're breathing, whether you're having chest pain, whether you're suicidal, instead I'm thinking about I need to feed my family. I need to clothe my family. So I'm going to see who can give me the most money. And then guess what? They're going to get treated first. And I feel like Dominion Energy is getting treated first in this state. They are getting treated first. And then, you know who's next? Everybody else. They are the top priority. And then we forget about our children and the air that are not going to be able to breathe, and the water that they're not going to be able to drink because we're poisoning it with infrastructure that we don't need. And so please, I would love to just have the opinions of the people heard on an equal playing field with Dominion Energy.
Mr. Chairman, may I
Thank
ask you a question?
Senator Sproul.
So are you saying that when Dominion Energy give any of us up here campaign contribution, that they're buying our vote?
I'm just saying it's hard to regulate somebody who gives you a lot of money. I'm not saying, like, if I was an ER nurse, I'm not saying that I would necessarily not try to give fair care, but I think it makes it complicated.
So what about others who give us a contribution?
Oh,
Are
yes,
they buying our votes too?
definitely think we should be taking money out of politics so that we can get back to the
Bless your
voices
heart,
of
bless your heart.
Virginia.
Senator Eben.
But you don't regulate all those people, you regulate this particular group.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator,
ma'am, before you leave, one, I want to thank you for coming today, because the more we hear from folks that aren't involved in politics, I love to hear that. But aren't we really today discussing environmental stuff and where the Dominion has gotten there? And there are a lot of facts that aren't put out there. 37% of the power that we get today, Dominion has to buy outside because we just don't have renewables to get there. Do I hope we get to renewables at some point? Absolutely. Is that their goal? Absolutely. But I think there's been a lot of misinformation put out there. And Senator Peterson has done a yeoman's work of sunshining some of those issues where some of us maybe got steered down the wrong path with Dominion, maybe on some numbers, right? But the reality is they were under extreme pressure from an administration, a previous presidential administration, to get some EPA regulations to where you get parts per million in a what do you call it, generation plant that don't even exist. The technology to get them there of exhaust fumes doesn't even exist today. So they're trying to retool. Now, whether they did it above board, below, I don't really care. But now we're at a point, and I'm a recipient of some of that money that came in from clean energy this year, where it says, and I'll read a headline from October 21st, it says a multimillionaire set out to counter Dominion. Now he's the state's biggest campaign donor. And if you go farther down, ma'am, it says, he said, quote, I went, wait a minute, they literally are writing the laws for a couple $1 million a year in contributions, and some lobbyist bill says, I can do that. And isn't that what he did? And you just heard from clean energy. So this is really a push between clean energy and fossil fuel energy, not so much as contributions. I don't see how singling out Dominion, if we're going to single out Dominion, then we need to single out Michael Bills and all these other companies. And so if we're going to have a true, honest discussion about it, and I think this has probably not gone the direction that Senator Peterson was hoping, because I truly know his heart and where he is, and he understands this issue, that we're making it about something that he is probably not necessarily on board with as far as either way we go. But I guess more than a question, I would just say to you, stay passionate about it, but you need to read the fine lines. If you're about environment and cleaning up, they're trying to do some of that. And I will tell you they're trying to do some of that. Maybe not at the pace that Dominion would like, but when I talk to my folks at Rappahannock Electric Cooperative who are trying to set lines in so people can get broadband, but they're having to deal with easements, there's a lot of issues that go into this stuff. And I truly hope we get there at some point with the renewals, but at that point, we're not quite there yet. Well, you can make somebody swallow a toad, doesn't mean they're going to like the taste of it. And so I would ask, as passionate as you are, to please look at the other side of this thing too. And I agree with my colleague from Chesterfield that if you think some money is going to buy some of these votes up here, you're absolutely wrong. But I would contend to tell you to please continue to come down and advocate on behalf of your issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay, thank you very much.
Mr.
Next.
Chairman.
Senator Servel's got to talk.
I just want to say something really quick. And the only reason I want to say is I think it might help maybe guide the testimony from some of us who are thinking about this. But you know, from my point of view, this is like water. You pour it out on the ground, eventually it's going to end up in the river. And, you know, we could put a ban on these contributions. And at the federal level, what that's done is these companies have employee PACs, and every member of the company writes a check to the PAC, and then the money comes in that way. Or the money goes to a 501c4, and it comes in that way. Or it goes to a 527, it comes in that way. Or it goes off to the RLCC or the DLCC, and it comes in that way. And there's lots of lawyers that know how to do that really well. And, no, not me. And so, I feel like I totally understand the perception issue and why people feel so strongly about this. And I'm hopeful that with the political change that's come to this Commonwealth over the last couple months, that you're going to see a different policy direction from the General Assembly. But it's not clear to me that the focus on the contribution ban is necessarily the solution to the problem. And so I think this is one piece. I'm just not clear how, going after this one subset of donors is going to all of a sudden solve the problem that I think everybody's seeking to resolve. Because I think that money, like that water, will find its way back into the system one way or the other. And so to the extent people are commenting on it, that's some of the stuff I'm listening for.
Well, and I appreciate the senator's concern, but I thought we'd already decided we weren't going to vote on these bills this week. And so we were going to hear from people that had come a long way to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators. My name is Josh Stanfield. I'm Executive Director of a grassroots group called Activate Virginia, a group that began at the end of 2016 asking candidates to pledge not to take money from Appalachian Power Dominion Energy. We offered no money to any of these candidates, never have. Over 200 people signed it, which makes it interesting to talk about Michael Bills and this large donor when, in fact, almost everyone, except a lot of the Republicans who are on board with that, signed on to the same sort of pledge for free. And the reason was there's clearly a problem with campaign finance in Virginia. I mean, we have a really bad reputation as being, corrupt. I mean, if you read Brent Tarter's book on the history of Virginia, The Grandees of Government, you'll see how this has developed over time. And so no one is suggesting this is actually a solution to the problem. This is one piece of a solution that you would have to have in tandem with contribution limit caps that would take care of an issue if you didn't like someone like Michael Bills giving a lot of money. What's important to know is that the amount of Democrats in the House who are on board with this is overwhelming. In the Senate, maybe it's a different story, but keep in mind that Governor Northam ran on banning all corporate contributions. This was a campaign promise. This is something we keep in mind as Democrats when we talk about these small, incremental bits of progress on this issue. Since everyone's talked and we've gotten most of the issues out, I wanted to address a few of the questions. One for the senator in Hampton Roads. I live in Yorktown, and Senator Mason was my delegate, Senator Spruill. And you can ask Senator Mason about money coming in and out of Hampton Roads. When it's necessary in the 93rd, we brought in a lot of money to protect or hold a seat. So it might have to do with competitive races in terms of how much money comes into a race in Hampton Roads. The final thing I want to say is be very careful about trying to limit from public service corporations to some sort of smaller set, one or two donors, because you get into questions of constitutionality. I've emailed with Senator Surville in 2017 about this, and delegates at the time, no longer, Minshew and Landis and others. It's very important when you look at the case law. You have Wagner v. FEC, this is 2016, where federal contractors, the Supreme Court allowed federal contractors to be banned from giving in federal campaigns. And if you look at the controlling case, it's FEC v. Beaumont, I believe, from 2003, not Citizens United. And what we're talking about is not using strict scrutiny. So be careful the way you word this. You don't want to word it such that it would be unconstitutional. While it is constitutional to ban groups if you have some sort of rationale that doesn't need a strict scrutiny application. So that's all I'm going to say for now. I'll be back for your next vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Next.
Hi, my name is Nancy Najari, and I'm from Northern Virginia, and I'm part of the Grassroots Coalition that we knocked on 500,000 doors, went all over the state, and we're in support of many different candidates for many different reasons. And I very much appreciate all of the arguments on all sides of this issue. I think it's a very difficult one. I think it's very sad that we have a lot of excess money and a lot of dark money that comes into our elections on all levels. What I would like to say is this. I'm coming from this from an international development professional point of view, and for the development of alternative energy sources to help combat greenhouse gas emissions and fossil fuels, et cetera, in every country and in states and localities that are successful in developing alternative energy sources, helping their economy, developing workforce, et cetera, helping with the public health issues, they need champions. And champions need to be able to rise to the top unencumbered. And so I'm coming at this from what can we do best for Virginia's future, to stay technologically on top of things, to open opportunities for some of the very large tech firms that want to come here and have 100% renewable to service their cloud, to keep people astute in other jobs that may not require going to college, but they can have excellent lives and excellent workforce opportunities. So I offer that if Dominion is not controlling the narrative, then it shouldn't be concerning to not have them give as much money, or for anybody else. I think it's up to us as Virginians to start leading us into the future and open alternative energy sources for the benefit of all. So thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, before you leave,
Senator
Mr.
Peake.
Chairman. Yeah, what is your grassroots group?
It's the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. It's about 40 different grassroots groups that operate throughout Virginia.
And are you based out of Northern Virginia? Or
Not just, no, they're all over.
Are you in Northern Virginia?
I am personally in Northern Virginia.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Thank you for providing some time today for me. My name is Kathleen Nawaz. I'm from Northern Virginia as well, and I'd like to take the discussion just back down to what this bill actually does. We've talked about alternative energy, renewable energy. We've talked about campaign finance reform, the need for that. But in fact, I think Senator Peterson laid this out very clearly. As he pointed out, if you're in most of this state, your one source of electricity is from Virginia Power and Dominion Power, and you can't go anywhere else. You can't light those candles or do whatever. You have no choice. You can't vote with your feet and go somewhere else or choose something else. You really don't have a choice. So your money then is going to Dominion. Dominion is then giving money in very large amounts here. That, to me, that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever, because if we remember that Dominion is an IOU and investor-owned utility, their mandate, what they have to do is to provide revenue back, dividends back to their investors. That's what they have to do. We are not, you all are charged with the welfare of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we as citizens are urging you to please remember that distinction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Yes. My name is David Kiebrick, and today I speak on behalf of the Northern Virginia Climate Coalition, and that's an informal alliance of 15 climate groups with a combined membership of several thousand. We strongly support Senate Bill 25. Simply stated, we think the climate crisis is the most serious problem humanity has ever faced. And we think it is the most serious issue that this legislative session has ever faced. We believe this bill will make it easier for legislators to objectively consider proposed energy bills. And I hope I don't need to remind you that sort of the gold standard of scientific information on this issue is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And they say what we get done in the next 10 years is going to be decisive. And they're calling for a much more rapid transition to renewables than Virginia at this time is even thinking about until the legislation, some that's proposed this year. We think that has to get passed. I guess I will say that we can be, you can be, a great example to the nation. What this legislation session does can affect the national debate. I hope that in the future we can look back and say the real groundwork for solving the climate crisis was done right here in Richmond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Peterson, I understand now that your request for a substitute went to a different person at Legislative Services. So there's a substitute up there somewhere, but what I want to do next week is take up that substitute, wrap in Senator Bell's, not his bill as well, and make him a chief co-patron, and then we'll have a discussion and vote on the bill.
Mr. Chair, if I might make one final statement, I apologize. I understand the comments of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. And this, to me, is not a partisan issue. When I actually fought against some of these bills, some of the best voices I had were on the Republican side. And so this, to me, is not partisan. And again, there's no, the agenda is what it is, obviously. But I would simply say the people in this audience all have an economic relationship with Dominion Power, okay, whether they like it or not. And they do by virtue of state law. Michael Bills doesn't have a relationship with anybody here. Okay, now he gave me money. He gave other people money. I get that. But he doesn't have a monopoly under our state law. So again, you can beat me up for taking money from him. Fair, take a shot. That's fine. But recognize that the laws that we pass are here to benefit a certain entity. So that's all I said, and I'll be quiet.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
Mr. Chairman, just to quickly move on, I would like to have my bill rolled into this one. And the only thing I'll say about it is I believe that one of the important aspects is that my personal feeling is these are monopolies, and they're the SEC justices are appointed by this body, and I think there's a conflict of interest, and that's one of the driving factors that has led me to support this legislation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate if you could take that action at the appropriate time. Thank you.
And the remaining bills on the docket will go by for the day. We're adjourned.